I'm Stacey.
I'm Jenny.
And this is Learning for Life,
a homeschool podcast.
We are two homeschoolers who use different methods, curriculum, and strategies to make it all work.
Our goal is to help parents teach kids how to develop a lifelong love of learning. Hello and welcome to the newest installment of the Homeschool How-To series. I am really excited about these. These are kind of short, really concise podcast episodes, not like our usual long-form ones. And in each of these, we dive deep into a specific homeschool topic. I'm your host, Jenny, and today I will be discussing with you narration. Now, if you haven't ever heard of narration and you don't know what it is quite yet, do not fear. I will go over all of it with you because even I'm still learning how to use narration in my homeschool, so I'm definitely not coming from an expert place. I'm still doing a lot of research on this subject and how to do it effectively. So just know that you're in good company, okay? There's no judgment here. So narration is a practice that you have your children do. In my case, it's after read alouds because I am still reading aloud to my children a lot because they don't quite read independently on their own yet. But narration is basically just having them kind of repeat back to you what we had just read. So, for example, when I'm doing this after chapters of Our Island Story, which is a history of England for boys and girls, or after we read a chapter of the Chronicles of Narnia, and I'll have my kids, my two school-aged kids, take turns narrating. So this is really, really great to have them do because it helps them with their reading comprehension, and it kind of shows to you what they're actually getting out of the things that you're reading to them so that you understand exactly how they're taking in this information and processing it. So for my younger kids, they do narration completely, out loud because they don't have the writing skills quite yet. But if your children are older, they can definitely do this in writing form. It's kind of like a more fun version of a book report because you're responding to what you read, but you're doing it in your own free-form way so that it doesn't feel like a chore. It just feels like you are explaining what just happened in your own words, and you can go about doing this in any way you like. So I think kids really respond well to this, especially if you give them the freedom to narrate as they wish. Now, if you're having your children do narration out loud, it's really important that they have this time to just have the floor and not be interrupted by anyone, not their siblings, not their parents, no one. So this is a lot harder than it even sounds because quite often when kids are narrating things, especially young kids, they will say something happened in the book a certain way, but that's not how it actually happened, or it doesn't match exactly what the history lesson was teaching. So it's really important to just hold your tongue, give them this space, and then don't necessarily correct them afterwards. Like say they got the name of a country wrong or the name of a character wrong. You don't want to say, oh, you said this, but you meant that. Maybe afterwards, maybe have another child kind of chime in and maybe it'll be self-corrected based on what that child says. Or what you can do is kind of just start talking about that specific part of their narration, like, oh, wasn't it funny when that character did blah, blah, blah? And so it reminds them, oh, that's the name of the character. And they'll probably realize their mistake and it's not a big deal. Or they'll just move on and not even notice. So that's a really important aspect of narration, is to just let children speak, let them kind of get all the information out, and then you very gently guide them if any part of their narration was slightly off. But you'll notice, for the most part, that children are actually really good at narration. And you'll also notice if you ever try to narrate something yourself as an adult, that it is actually kind of hard. So it's really cool that kids kind of do this naturally. And I've especially noticed this with my kids because my kids just love to talk and they're narrating to me all day long, whether I ask them to or not. Kids are just great at this skill. So it's really good to reinforce this for them. I've noticed that narration is really good for, obviously, their reading comprehension because they're recalling what they just read and kind of processing it in real time. It's also good for vocabulary because maybe they'll feel adventurous enough to maybe use one of these new words that they learned in the text. And then also it gets them used to just like speaking in front of people. It's kind of like what the whole like poetry recitation exercises do for kids. It kind of just gets them used to being slightly out of their comfort zone, but speaking in kind of a public way so that they get used to that kind of thing. Because I think that's a really important skill to have, you know, when it comes to later on having a career, being in college and making presentations, or going on job interviews as an adult, that kind of thing. So narration really ties back into a lot of other aspects of life, and I think it's a really important skill. I do want to add that narration is like a cornerstone of the Charlotte Mason method. She was really, really big on narration. She thought it was probably the most important part of education. So I just wanted to leave you with that note because it really is an important skill to teach. So yeah, I think I've covered all the things that I wanted to mention really quickly about narration. If you have any questions on this practice, just give us an email at kidslearningforlife@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram, on Facebook. You can find our YouTube channel. All of these are called Kids Learning for Life. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review because that really, really helps other people find our show. And with that, it's time to say, see you next time.